At the 2021 U.S. Open, Novak Djokovic stood one match away from a historic calendar Grand Slam. He led by a set, then his game fractured, shots flew long, his movement slowed. The match and history slipped away. This moment is a collapse, a sudden total disintegration of performance where a winning position evaporates. It is the central mystery of tennis, a sport built on relentless consistency. For the player, it feels like a system failure. For the opponent, it is an unexpected opening. For the audience, it is a baffling shift in a story they thought they knew. These unravelings appear chaotic, an athlete's world coming apart in real time. But chaos has a structure, a collapse is not magic, it is mechanics. This examination dissects those mechanics. It moves past the simple narrative of choking or tanking. It traces the invisible threads, physical, mental, tactical, that when pulled can make a champion's game unravel. The coming sections will isolate each thread. They will show how a muscle cramps, a thought spirals, a strategy backfires. They will prove that a collapse is rarely one thing breaking. It is a sequence of small, interconnected failures. This is the anatomy of a downfall. The first crack is often physical. A player's body, pushed to its absolute limit, simply refuses to cooperate. This begins not with a dramatic fall, but with a subtle shift. The service motion loses its fluid snap. Footwork becomes a half-step slow. These are the early warnings of muscular fatigue, where lactate builds faster than the body can clear it. The legs feel heavy, a direct result of glycogen depletion in the muscles. Every sprint to a wide ball carries a tax, and recovery between points stretches longer. From this generalized fatigue, specific vulnerabilities emerge. A previously minor ache, a twinge in the shoulder or a tightness in the hamstring is amplified under load. The body starts to compensate, altering biomechanics to protect the weak point. This creates a cascade. A sore knee leads to a tentative lunge, which robs a ground stroke of its power and depth. The opponent immediately senses this physical hesitation and attacks the compromised movement relentlessly. In some cases, the collapse is sudden and acute. A ligament tears during a violent change of direction, as with Maria Sharapova's shoulder in the 2007 Australian Open final. More often, it's a gradual erosion. The heat of a five-set marathon, like the 2012 Australian Open final between Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal, becomes a contest of physical attrition. Cramps seize muscles that have exhausted their electrolytes, vision can narrow. Decision-making falters as the brain, itself an energy-intensive organ, is starved of fuel. The match ceases to be about skill and becomes a brutal test of biological endurance, one many bodies are not built to pass. But when the body holds, something else often breaks first. The mind, this is the mental meltdown, where performance disintegrates not from a torn muscle but from a thought. Pressure does not announce itself. It begins as a quiet hum, a missed easy volley that shouldn't have been missed. Then comes the internal dialogue. A player starts to question every decision. Should I come to the net? Is my toss too low? This is analysis paralysis. The game, which is normally instinct and flow, becomes a series of hesitant, manufactured actions. The brain is fighting itself. Anxiety then tightens its grip. It manifests physically. Breath becomes shallow, the shoulders rise. The famous yips can seize a hand, turning a reliable serve into a wild, uncontrollable motion. Crowd noise, once background, sharpens into individual shouts. The scoreboard feels heavier with each point lost. History offers stark examples. At Wimbledon in 1993, Jana Novotná led Steffi Graf by a set and 4-1, serving for the championship. Then the magnitude of the moment arrived. Her game dissolved into double faults and mise-hit volleys. Graf seized the opening and won. Novotná's tears on the Duchess of Kent's shoulder became the iconic image of a mind succumbing to its own pressure. The collapse was complete, and it originated entirely between the ears. The court was the same, the ball was the same, but the player inside the contest had become a stranger to herself. But the mind can be clear and the body can be strong, yet a match can still fall apart in plain sight. This is the tactical trap, a slow-motion collapse born not of chaos but of a plan gone wrong. It often starts with a trusted strategy failing. A player known for relentless aggression keeps charging the net, only to be passed again and again. A defensive baseliner decides to trade power shots with a bigger hitter, playing directly into their opponent's hands. These are not random mistakes, they are choices repeated even as they stop working. The real danger is the opponent's adaptation. A smart player doesn't just win points. They dismantle the blueprint. They notice a server always targets the backhand on breakpoint, and they inch over to steal the return. They see a forehand breakdown after long rallies, and they deliberately extend every exchange to that side. The trap is set not by the opponent's strength, but by their ability to exploit a persistent weakness. History is filled with these quiet ambushes. In the 2012 Australian Open final, Rafael Nadal began returning Novak Djokovic's serve from several meters behind the baseline. This unexpected move neutralized Djokovic's power and dragged him into exhausting, grinding rallies. It was a tactical shift that turned the match. The collapse here is a patient, calculated unraveling. One player's game plan becomes a predictable script, and the other player simply reads every line. A tactical trap can be sprung indoors under perfect lights. But step outside and the game board itself begins to shift. The court surface is the first silent saboteur. A clay court slows the ball, creating a higher bounce that punishes impatient attackers. The 2022 French Open saw Stefanos Tsitsipas, a powerful baseliner, struggle for over 3 hours against a lower-ranked player. His aggressive shots rendered less potent by the red dirt. Grass courts like those at Wimbledon do the opposite. The ball stays low and skids, turning a reliable rally shot into a sudden, unplayable screamer. A player's entire movement pattern, perfected on hard courts, can become a liability in a single point on grass. Then the weather arrives. Heat is a brutal physical tax. In the 2014 Australian Open final, temperatures hit 43 degrees Celsius. Lena visibly wilted, her movement slowing as Dominika Cibulková, better conditioned for the furnace, pushed her to 3 exhausting sets. Wind, however, is a mental disruptor. It turns a routine overhead into a complex calculation. A serve toss becomes a gamble. At the 2022 Indian Wells tournament, fierce gusts forced even the calmest pros, like Taylor Fritz, to abandon their usual tactics and simply try to keep the ball in play. The sun presents another simple yet devastating challenge. Serving directly into a late afternoon glare can erase an ace from a player's arsenal. These elements don't just test skill. They fracture focus, forcing a player to fight the environment as much as the opponent across the net. But after accounting for the body, the mind, and the environment, another factor remains. It is a tool the player trusts implicitly until it fails: the racket. A professional racket is an extension of the player's arm. Its weight, balance, and string tension are calibrated to the gram and the pound. A change of just 2 pounds in string tension can alter the depth of every shot by several feet. This precision is a necessity at this level. It is also a vulnerability. The most common failure is not a broken frame, but a broken string. On a clay court, grit works into the strings, sawing through them over hours. A main string snaps. The tension profile of the entire racket face collapses instantly. Shots that should clear the net by inches now sail long, topspin vanishes. Control is replaced by an unpredictable trampoline effect. The player must now make a critical decision: play on with a warped weapon or change rackets and break their rhythm. Both options carry a cost. Less dramatic but equally damaging is a gradual loss of tension. As a match wears on, strings lose their elasticity. A racket that felt crisp in the first set becomes dead and unresponsive by the third. The player must swing harder to generate the same power, increasing fatigue and the risk of error. They are fighting their own equipments. Sometimes the failure is in the hand, not the strings. A sweaty grip can cause the racket to twist on impact, sending shots wildly off target. A worn overgrip becomes slick, forcing the player to tighten their hold, which tenses the forearm and deadens touch. These are small things. But in a match decided by millimeters, a slippery handle can feel like trying to perform surgery with greasy gloves. The racket is a piece of technology, and like all technology, it has a breaking point. When it fails, it doesn't just remove a tool, it removes certainty. A string snaps. An opponent adjusts, the court surface slows, each failure as detailed is tangible. But there is another force often blamed for a collapse. It is called momentum. It is a story commentators love to tell. A player makes a great shot, the crowd roars, and suddenly they are unstoppable. Momentum becomes the explanation for everything, yet this is mostly an illusion. Momentum does not exist as a physical law on court. It is a label observers apply after the fact. It describes a sequence of events, but it does not cause them. A player does not win 3 games in a row because of an abstract wave of energy. They win because their first serve percentage jumps 8 points. Or because their opponent's backhand begins to break down under targeted pressure. What is called momentum is usually just a symptom of a solved problem or a discovered weakness. The danger of the momentum narrative is its vagueness. It encourages magical thinking. A coach might tell a player to ride the momentum, instead of identifying the precise tactical adjustment that created the advantage. Conversely, a player fearing they have lost all momentum may stop executing their proven game plan. They chase a feeling instead of a strategy. Roger Federer, after his 2008 Wimbledon loss to Rafael Nadal, dismissed the idea. He noted that each point in the 5th set was its own isolated battle. The previous point had no physical bearing on the next. The belief in momentum, however, can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If a player believes the match has irreversibly turned against them, their focus fractures. They stop solving the actual technical problems in front of them. They begin to watch their own collapse unfold as if it were destined. The real collapse was never the momentum, it was the decision to believe in it. For years, the narrative of collapse pointed to a single villain, a twisted ankle, a shattered nerve, a broken racket. But modern analysis strips away that simplicity. Researchers at Stanford Sports Analytics Lab fed thousands of match transcripts and biometric data into machine learning models. Their goal was to find the primary cause of a dramatic downturn in play. The AI's answer was surprising, it rarely found one. The models identified patterns invisible to the human eye. A player's first serve percentage might drop a mere 5% in the 3rd game of the 2nd set. This minor dip forces more second serves, which an opponent begins to attack. That tactical pressure increases heart rate variability, a key indicator of stress. This stress then compounds a minor, pre-existing muscle fatigue in the quadriceps. No single element was catastrophic, but together they formed a feedback loop of decline. The data revealed a truth. What looks like a sudden mental meltdown is often a physical chain reaction. What appears as a tactical blunder is frequently a symptom of eroding shot tolerance. The AI mapped these cascades, showing that in over 80% of analyzed collapses, at least 3 different failure modes were interacting. The serve, the mind, and the legs were not separate departments. They were a single, fragile system, and the system was beginning to fray. The data shows collapses are rarely single points of failure. But that raises a deeper question. How does a match, a finely tuned system, actually fall apart? The process is not a sudden break. It is a cascade. It often begins with a minor physical disturbance. A slight muscle ache ignored, a drop in hydration. This small deficit forces a subtle compensation. A player might shorten their backswing to protect a shoulder, or take half a step less to reach a wide ball. The immediate effect is almost invisible. The serve loses 2 miles per hour, the footwork becomes a fraction slower. But in elite tennis, margins are everything. That slightly weaker serve returns to the center of the court. The opponent, sensing no immediate danger, attacks it. Now the player is on the defensive. A point that was once controlled becomes a desperate scramble. This requires more energy, accelerating the initial fatigue. The mental calculation shifts from strategy to survival. A tactical doubt creeps in. Is my forehand working? The player starts aiming safer targets, abandoning the aggressive lines that built their lead. This predictable play is instantly recognized by the opponent. A strategic trap is set. Now 3 interconnected systems are failing. The body is compensating, the tactics are shrinking, and the opponent's confidence is surging. Each small failure amplifies the next. The final collapse appears sudden from the outside. A double fault, a wild error, but it is merely the last domino. It is the point where the accumulating adaptations, the saved energy, the safer targets, the growing doubt, can no longer sustain competitive play. The system, overloaded by a chain of tiny compromises, simply buckles. The stadium empties, the lights dim, The final statistics flash on the screen, a permanent record of the collapse. But the true story is not in the numbers, it is in the quiet that follows. A player sits alone in the locker room, listening to the distant echo of the crowd leaving. The adrenaline drains away, leaving only the hollow ache of what went wrong. A coach packs a bag methodically, each piece of equipment, a reminder of a plan that disintegrated. The ball kids sweep the baseline, gathering the last few balls, erasing the physical evidence of the struggle. For everyone else, the match is over. For the one who collapsed, it has just begun to replay. This silence is where the real analysis happens, not with data but with memory. Every missed shot, every misjudged bounce, every moment of doubt returns with perfect, painful clarity. The fragility was always there, hiding just beneath the peak performance, waiting for the right combination of pressure, error, and chance to surface. Outside, the court lies dormant, the net hangs still, the lines are clean and empty. It looks peaceful, almost innocent. It gives no indication of the psychological war that was just fought on its surface, or of how close every competitor walks to the edge of their own capability. The arena resets itself, impartial and ready for the next person to step onto that tightrope. The only thing left is the echo of a simple, devastating truth. In this arena at this level, everyone is breakable. The only question ever is when.